a lot of different stuff in there. And then we'll usually jump in a little bit of fish hydrolysate right here. This stuff is real good for stimulating both bacteria and fungi. We may put in just a tiny little bit of molasses. If we want to create, well, we put some liquid seaweed in. Provides a lot of different things. If we want a tea that is more fungally dominated, we can use some things like oat bran or wheat bran, things like that. What all?
Oatmeal will work.
What all
fish
do you put
itself,
in?
fish has a tendency to be more.
I'm sorry.
Fish has a tendency to be more fungally dominated. Now, I have a friend, Jeff Longfeld. I'm going up. He's in Alaska. He's in Anchorage. He's been doing a show there as long as Bob's been doing his. Don't hold it against him. He's actually a lawyer by trade.
Oh my gosh, we can't hold that against him, can we?
Yeah. But here's what he does. It's different. I know Bob's got a chance to read it. I think I give you a copy of his book.
Teaming with microbes.
He actually starts a fungal tea prior to starting his bacterial-based tea. He gets the fungus going. He gets his fungal-based compost, puts in his cornmeal or his bran or anything that has a tendency to hold and feed fungus first. And 2 to 3 days in the book, I think he says like 3 days, he starts watching it with his microscope. You don't have to do this, but he's being more science about it at first. Then, at the end, when he sees these things starting to form, then he goes ahead and adds his little bit of molasses if he's going to. Goes ahead and adds what's going to be his base, his inoculant for bacteria, and then lets it go another 24 to 36 hours and uses them together. That gives him what he thinks and what is, looking at his scope pictures, a good balance of fungus and a good balance of bacteria. Now, we'll get into this a little bit. I'm sure Bob's got it on the list. What plants need what kind? Some people don't need, some plants don't need fungi as bad as others. Other plants are very much fungus dominated or preferred. And so what you make has a lot to do with where you put it. What are you going to grow with? Think
most of what we do, we kind of do a kind of a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. We make a basic compost tea that has plenty of bacteria, plenty of fungi in it. If you want to get into these designer type teas, talk to Bruce or somebody smarter than me, somebody who has researched it a lot, and there are people out there that do this. Another very commonly used material to add is material derived from worm castings. Bruce was mentioning that is such a good thing to start with. There are actually some additional stimulants, some things that you will get by using worm castings, even if you just take worm castings and mix it in with your compost initially.
Well, a worm is your best composter. I mean, he does all the work for you. He just spits it out the other end and you use it.
And then what do? We sit there and we let it brew. Like Bruce was saying, in some real specialty situations, you may brew with your fungal stimulants for 72 hours and then switch to bacterial. For the most part, if you're just using good compost to start with, you start it brewing, and 24 to 48 to maybe 72 hours, that's your optimum time, to be using it. And you want to be absolutely certain that you have that air bubbling through there the whole time that it's going. I mean, if you have power failure for an hour or two, you can run into real problems. But I'm not saying get a backup generator. But if we have a thunderstorm while you're brewing and the power goes out for a few hours, you may want to dump it and start over.
One thing that I do want to emphasize, we're saying it, when we say brew it for 24 more hours, you may only leave that bag in, especially in warm weather, 6 or 8 of those hours. Then you want to pull that bag out and let it just cook. Brew might be a better term when I'm cooking here. Because you can't overdo that, and that makes you go anaerobic a lot quicker. So I take that out, I put it back in the compost pile. It's still got a lot of goodness in it. Throw it around your plants. I take my air stones back out then that were in the bag, and I put them into the tank, so now I've got 4 or 6 air stones running in the tank. I want as much air as I can, again, over bubbling the tank, and I usually can't do that in the middle of 5 minutes.
Question?
Yes. When you put compost tea on plants and stuff, how much you put on? Just to get them wet or slightly wet or?
If you're wanting to apply it to the foliage, just enough to wet the foliage. If you're wanting to, treat the ground, as much as you want to soak it, as much as you can.
And you want to get to the underside of those leaves.
Straight top and bottom.
The stomata are open. It gets the goodness in it early in the day, and underneath if you can, as well as on top, and you'll get a lot more goodness out.
Why don't I take just a second and show a couple of kinds of sprayers? Why don't you run see if you've got a tea bucket in your truck, and we'll show you a very basic When we did the seminar up in Austin with Dr. Ingham, she called a tea off or a brew off, and about a dozen people, maybe 15 people, brought their own compost tea makers, and we kind of had a contest as to who would make the best tea. And then the next day we all got our microscopes out and she taught us how to analyze the tea and figure out which was the best tea, which produces the greatest diversity of microbes and the greatest number of microbes. The number one tea that was produced that weekend, or that week actually, was Malcolm Beck's little machine that cost, I don't know, $12,000, $15,000, something like that. His worm gold machine. And that she rated as the very best tea that was produced. Number 2 out of 12 or 15 tea makers was Bruce's bucket, which I hope he has one of in his truck that he's going to show you, that some amount of materials used in making that bucket was about $25. So the point here is you don't have to buy a really fancy machine in order to make compost tea. The one we use costs about $1,800. That's basically why we charge for the tea. It doesn't cost very much to make the tea. It'll take a while to pay for that machine. But you can buy these things in all different sizes. If you're just doing this for home use, I don't think you ever need more than 5 gallons of tea. If you're applying it to acreage, yeah, you probably want a machine that makes bigger batches of tea at one time. Yes, sir.
That button is on his website.
It is on his website, but it's easier to see in person. Yes, sir.
Using that one, have the 5 gallon bucket.
Uh-huh.
Except for the sediment in the bottom, I couldn't find full strength in my kept pump spray.
That's fine. That's fine. No problem whatsoever. It just goes further if you dilute it with water. One advantage to applying it full strength is, when you stop and think about it, if you're using a hose-in sprayer, which most of us end up using, yeah, little chai all over it, that chlorinated water that you're forcing through here is going to do some damage to the microbes because there's no way that you can very effectively, dechlorinate the water that you're now putting through your sprayer. Typically, again, so it kills off half the life in your compost tea. You still got an awful lot of good stuff out there. And so, yes, you can use this type of sprayer, but the ideal sprayer would be a sprayer that takes fully diluted material, and this is just, the simplest little thing, these little pump-up sprayers that, depending on the size you get, hold from, what is this, a 1.5 gallon? This is 1 gallon size. The biggest one is like a 2 gallon size. You don't want to go much bigger than that because it gets too heavy to lug around. But putting it on without diluting it, or diluting it with rainwater or something like that so you're not killing a lot of the microbes off, would definitely be a good idea. But again, that's just not always practical in the home yard. So you end up using hose-in sprayers and things like that, and sure, you're going to kill off some of the microbes, probably not too many. Well, it depends on how big your yard is. And for foliar spraying, this kind of sprayer is very practical. Yes, sir.
I pull it around in a bag and just, that's a big tank.
That works fine. Yes, sir.
If you increase the volume, you've been brewing in 5 gallons at a time, you increase to 10 or 15 gallons, can you just multiply the ingredients?
Absolutely.
For 5 without
Absolutely.
the air? Do you need to add more stone?
You would need a bigger air stone, or you need a bigger air pump, because,
Air compressor.
well, you would have more air stones then, yes, because you're trying to maintain the highest possible level of dissolved oxygen in there. Things that you're looking at here, that strand running right across there, that is one of the beneficial fungi. These guys are little, probably dinoflagellates of some sort, the little protozoans. It's hard to see just on a picture, a micrograph like this, but all those little specks, if you're looking at them through the microscope, they'd be moving around and vibrating like mad, and some of you'd actually see moving. The diversity of microbes that you get in compost tea is just fascinating, and of course my